Today's episode of the ExploreVM podcast, we take a look at Skylines Academy, the fine folks behind it, and watch out, we've got a new theme song. Hello, and welcome to the ExploreVM podcast. Continuing to educate yourself in new technologies has been a recurring topic on this show. Today, we're going to chat with a group that went a step further and started their own academy. Let's start with some introductions. Nick, why don't you start?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And for those that don't know me, my name's Nick Collier. I'm one of the founders here at Skylines Academy, and I'm also the practice lead for our Azure practice at Ahead, which is a local value-added reseller in Chicago. And pretty excited to be on the show and share what we're doing here.
My name's Amy Manley. I actually came from the customer side for many, many years in virtualization and automation, and now I'm working as a technical professional for Azure at Microsoft.
Hi, Paul. I'm Brett Bosick here. I am an engagement manager at Ahead, also co-founder of Skylines with Amy and Nick. I met Nick through work, and I've known Amy for a few years as well. So, yeah.
Yep, and we just couldn't all wait to work together on another project on top of our main jobs. So that's why we're here.
All right, well, let's dive right into this. So what exactly is Skylines? What's it all about?
So kind of just want to go into a little bit of a backstory here. A lot of people know Amy and Nick in the industry. They follow them on Twitter. I don't even have a Twitter account. I know, shame on me. I need to get caught up on that. I will get one, I promise. This is actually my first podcast. Shout out to Paul for hosting me. Hopefully I don't mess up too bad. So before I worked at a technology company based out of Chicago, I actually studied public policy in Berlin, Germany, and then I moved home back to Chicago. I was kind of looking for jobs, and the job market had changed since I had been gone, and I was looking around, sifting through some job ads, and I was wondering, where are all the jobs at? And I noticed that about probably 50 to 70% of the jobs were in technology. So I thought to myself, why don't I give this a shot? Why don't I see what this is all about? And that's why I'm in my current career right now. I started out as a writer on the consulting team, and then as I started understanding the data center technologies a little bit more, I moved into more of a business development role where I created and packaged services for our customers that we could say, hey, we have this on the truck for you, we can offer this to you, and they would either take it as is or we would customize it for them. From there, I moved into sales a little bit, so working on our cloud team where I still work with Nick, focus on public cloud, so AWS and Azure primarily. And that's kind of where I am now, and being out in the field a little bit, talking to customers more and more, I think we noticed that there is a gap out there with public cloud, and it is that it's grown so rapidly. It's hard for people to keep up. It's hard for them to keep their skill sets up there. It's hard for them to propel their careers forward. So we wanted to start finding a way to fill in that gap. And that's where Nick and Amy and I came together and we're like, hey, we think we can make this really awesome course around Azure to start with. So this is our first course, the 7533 exam certification course. And we thought, we can fill in this gap. We can make an awesome course with all of our backgrounds and our skills combined and put together something really great for people so that they can either enhance their skill sets or get certified. So that's kind of the birth of Skylines and the birth of our very first course. And our mission is actually to educate, enable, and empower people to move forward in their careers. And we're going to start with Azure.
Yeah, and I think I'll just kind of lead up what Brett said. The educate, enable, empower is something we came up with as we were kind of looking through our, what do we really want to do here? It's not just educate. We want to teach. We want to kind of get more and more people into Azure. Like Brett said, we saw this gap. We're seeing the gap close between Azure and AWS. Anyone in industry today has seen, okay, everyone thought Amazon was kind of this big leader and had taken off so far ahead. Well, Azure just kind of magically closed the door, so quickly, on AWS and in the enterprise. And so there was just this gap again of educating people, but that wasn't enough. We found, certainly when I've worked with customers in the industry and, fellow colleagues in the industry, it's not enough just to know the technology. You have to truly be able to use it and meet and solve business problems. And then on top of that, the other thing is like, how do people truly get empowered in their careers? So the education is kind of this first step. We want that to then enable you and ultimately empower you to get ahead. And so, eventually, we can talk more about the future a bit later on, but, we want to kind of hit a lot of the schools, a lot of the, colleges, things like that, to try to get more and more people into this industry. We know over time, not enough people kind of embracing technology. It's got a certain stereotype around it. And, I think when people kind of realize what the art of possible is with these technologies, I think it really opens up just a lot of doors for people. And, Amy's now at Microsoft too, doing a lot of really cool things in the education space. So.
Yeah, and keeping on top of training for it is crazy because you do look up courses online and they're already outdated. It changes next week, it changes next month. So it's really important to stay on top of the topics and of what's available. So as a consumer, it's hard to keep up. Even as a, technical specialist, I'm trying to keep up because it's an ever-changing environment. So
Yeah, I think Amy's point too, like we launched this course, what was it, Nick and Amy, 2-3 weeks ago now, and we're seeing new services roll out in Azure every day, and we're trying to keep up with that, and we're planning on, continually pushing things out so that people are on top of what they need to know.
So some of my listeners might know this, some of them might not, but Nick, you already have courses on Pluralsight. Why not just continue on there?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I definitely, as I was looking at recording courses for the first time, I did a course on VMware vRealize Orchestrator. I did a course on HashiCorp Terraform, specifically on automating AWS and vSphere. And Pluralsight, they're fantastic to work with. I think if you're getting into a course, and trying to go through that process, I highly think, highly encourage anybody to kind of try that out because you learn a lot from it. I think the big difference though with Skylines is Pluralsight is a very, it's got a lot of courses. It's very open, a lot of authors. We wanted something a little bit more focused, right? There are also other courses out there on Udemy and, from other authors on 7533, but, they weren't always kept up to date or, the teaching style wasn't really quite exactly what we wanted. And we just wanted a little bit more control over our own brand and messaging, around this. So we did actually put our course on Udemy as well, but it's still under Skylines Academy. It's our course. We can control the slides. We can control the demos. I know Brett's working on quizzes and things and study guides. So, as we thought about it as well, we also want to open up things like a Slack channel. And Amy can talk more about some of the future things we've got coming out a little bit later on. But again, it's all about how do we create our own sense of community around Azure, specifically around Azure certification, around Azure education.
Now, the three of you are clearly working professionals. This is not your full-time job. It's not your primary job. So how do you find time to record? How do you find time to keep this all up to date, given your current job?
Yeah, so I guess, given I do most of the recordings, yeah, I'll kind of jump in for that right now. And I think there's a couple of funny stories. Yeah, one is, I take all the equipment with me everywhere I go. So if I'm going to a client for my main job, I've got my laptop with me, I've got my Rode Podcaster with me, and this sort of metal disc that the microphone sits on. And I can tell you now, every single time I go through airport security, they stop me and search everything because this thing looks like something you shouldn't be carrying, when you kind of look through an X-ray. So I mean, I guess that's one part of it, kind of doing it wherever I've got time. And the other thing is, you've got to be very systematic about it. We've got a schedule that we've kind of kept to as much as possible, and it's weekends, it's getting up at 3 a.m. Amy jokes a little bit because I think you were looking at the backup recording recently, and
well, I was doing part of the course, and one of his demos, it shows it deploying at 4 a.m. and then 4:30. So he obviously woke up early to record.
Yeah, it's sort of an interesting thing too, because when you're recording, you've also got to be in the right frame of mind as well. So there's times where I've got up and I've sat there in front of the microphone and done absolutely nothing because I just couldn't get the right tone and all those kind of things because if you're not in the mood, you're not in the mood, and that comes through when people listen to it. So trying to make sure it's always at the right time, I think is really important. But It's definitely a challenge. I think the other thing that's great though is a lot of what I've done here with Brad and Amy has been able to be carried along into my main job as well. So, given that I lead a practice for Azure and there's a lot of engineers that I work with, a lot of architects, a lot of them not only take the course, but we've also used a lot of this content, given back to a head to use as part of Azure Innovation Day. So that's something we run a lot in the community. You've probably seen Brett and me and some others kind of running around different cities recently, training people, and that's something that, has worked out well, and thankfully Ahead allows us to have that kind of, relationship in terms of, giving back and, we can do these things on our own.
Well, you kind of took the next question out of my mouth there. I was going to ask if you had buy-in from your employers at all with this, given that, two of you are with a consulting firm and one of you is with Microsoft. Was there any kind of, hey, this is a great idea, or is this just completely rogue? You're doing it on your own and see where it takes you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the clear thing there is, we were very upfront and transparent early on with with Ahead when we were going down this journey, and as long as it's not competing or doing anything like that, there's no issue. If we were going out and selling consulting services on the side, I think it'd be a little bit different. But I think,
Right.
one of the great things I think with all our employers here is, they encourage us to kind of go out and, learn and explore and be more creative and do your own thing as well. Like Amy does a lot of blogging. We've got Two Ninjas One Blog still. At Ahead in itself, I think we've got about a dozen different bloggers that go out and blog about various topics. And I know Eric Shanks is an example. He records courses as well. There's other people that record courses and do podcasts and various things. So I think as long as, we're all growing ourselves and in turn that grows the company we work for, I think it's a positive thing for everybody. But I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything to that.
Right, like Microsoft in general, just we're really open with partners and educating. Big, um, we have a big connection with just schools in general and higher ed and K through 12 and just empowering students to learn, students with disabilities. So I just like the message that Microsoft as a whole has brought about with showing empathy for our customers and customer obsession as far as what do people need, what's the best way to have them learn or get certain technology to them if they're in a remote area. So all those things take place versus just, how to make money. So it's a great environment.
Yeah, I think, to add to that, good companies hire good people, and people who are good at their jobs are passionate at work and outside of work. So I think it kind of is mutually beneficial to both Microsoft Ahead and all of us, right? We're learning on the job and we're learning outside of the job. So
Now, we could open up a huge technical bubble here. We could start a debate. But why Azure instead of AWS or Google Cloud or any of the other multiples of cloud offerings out there?
Yeah, I'll definitely give my opinion. I'm going to let Amy or Brett go first here as to why. So,
Well, I think, Amazon was first, and so there's a lot out there already. A lot of, big community, especially with VMware. And there's a huge community surrounding that. So Microsoft is definitely catching up, and Google's out there too with their niche products as well. But I don't know, it was even during blogging when I was blogging about Amazon, and then I started learning Azure on the customer side, and I was like, wow, this is intuitive. I can, and then the documentation was so great, but there was a big lack of education on it. It's like, where do you go? Okay, Pluralsight was always the de facto, and there was never anything to fill the gap. So I think that's probably one of the other reasons that drove us to do education for Azure is because there does still seem to be a big gap. While the focus is on Amazon right now, the big boy, but Microsoft, the little guy's catching up. So
everyone likes the little guy, right?
right, the underdog.
Yeah. Brett, what are your thoughts before I kind of,
yeah, I guess we could say, like Paul said, we can go into a debate about who we think is better than whom. We all have opinions. We all like Nike better than Adidas, at the end of the day. They all have the same functionality, right?
Go White
But
Sox.
I think with right, I think at the end of the day, we kind of saw in the field just with our subset of customers that, first it was Amazon and they're big and they're great, and then with Azure, with Microsoft already being in a lot of accounts, it kind of just was a natural fit and it caught fire. And we kind of looked into it and we're like, yeah, let's run with this. So not that one's better than the other, just what we were seeing out there.
Yeah, for me, I think, the Microsoft story, when you see what Satya has done with the company, the culture, I think Amy was telling me this, like lead with empathy was the big thing. And, I think we can all just get behind that, and I think we love that story. So I think that was a big part of it. I think at the same time, just seeing how well, Microsoft gets the enterprise and how we were just approaching this, I would call it the second wave of cloud right now, right? We had this kind of early adopters wave, and now we're in kind of the mainstream wave, right? Where enterprises that, aren't really going to try out every single preview service. They want mainstream GA services. They want all the features ready there. Cloud's reached that point now. Amazon's had a lot of these features there before, but the big difference that I saw was in Amazon, you had to always go to some third-party product like Datadog for monitoring effectively. You had to go like Cloud Checker for optimization, and there's all these other tools that you have to kind of assemble to kind of get the most out of it. And at the same time, as Amy said, there's been so many courses already on AWS. A Cloud Guru's done a phenomenal job on the AWS side, and so it was almost like, okay, well, how do we create something like that, but for Azure, but more specifically, with that concept of educate, enable, empower, and really focused around enterprise as well. So part of the course, when we release the 7533, it certainly follows the curriculum, right? We go through app services, network and storage, VMs, etc. You can kind of see it all in the preview, but it goes beyond that. We wanted to really, truly say to people, okay, well, it's one thing to know, okay, this is how how Key Vault works for security or how storage works, but what does that actually mean for an enterprise user? Like, what am I actually going to do with that day to day? And so what we've done is we didn't just do the lectures. We built a lot of like demonstrations on top of that. Some of those are really specific around curriculum topics that have to be covered to, we want people to pass the exam, obviously, and make sure everything's covered. But on top of that, I'll give you a good example in the Security Center is one of those things in Azure, when I started having to have security conversations, I was like, this thing is a game changer. Because you can sort of prevent and respond to threats and do all sorts of interesting things in Security Center. And so we really focused then around, okay, well, let's not just cover off, okay, here's the 10 checkboxes you need to know for the curriculum, but how does Security Center really get used? What does it actually look like when somebody has an RDP brute force attack into their system? How do I respond to that? And I think that was one of the big differences that we wanted to go for, and just one of the reasons also for Azure. I think they get the problem, they provide all these features out there. It's now up to us to go and show people really how to use them and make the most of them. So
yeah, go a little deeper than just click enable, walk away.
Yeah, exactly. And you asked like why not AWS GCP? There's no reason we won't do a GCP course when the time is right. We've got 2 more Azure certification courses to knock out next. So we've got the 7533, which is the main course everybody should take to get that fundamental knowledge with Azure. And we picked that one specifically because it's around implementing. We could have started on the architecting one, which is more design orientated, but I'm a big believer in unless you actually know how to go in and configure something, you don't truly know something. That's just personal opinion. But then there's also the 7532, which is around developing applications for Azure. That's probably the one we're going to do next. There's a lot of overlap between that and the 533. And then we'll move on to the architecting one, which is the 535. But yeah, just hugely passionate about Azure and love what they're doing and wanted to get behind it.
And we did get our 533 certifications as well. So
yes, yeah.
We're not just talking. Hey,
You
we can help
practice
you
what you
pass.
preach over there.
You did that first. Yeah.
Right.
Someone actually asked me that. They sent a message like, "Do you have your certification?" I was like, "You know what? We actually need to put that on the site that we have
Certified instructor.
Right, Azure certified instructor, exactly. Taking questions out of my mouth once again, I was going to ask if there were further Azure certifications on the roadmap for Skylines. The same with any other cloud technologies that might be added to the repertoire. I don't know what the proper wording I would use there. Added to the course list.
Well, we're definitely gonna do some one-offs as well, like not just certification ones, but maybe log analytics or how to use Cloud in, maybe a 1-hour video of topics that seem to come up a lot with customers or generally in the community as well. So
Yeah, Amy's
Okay.
working on one of the next courses to come out. Maybe you want to share a little bit about that
oh,
one?
the cloud in?
Yeah.
Yeah, cost management, it's a big deal when it comes to cloud, and
Yeah.
people want to know what their bill means. So,
What, people actually have to pay for it? I thought it
right.
was free.
Yeah. So, as most people know, Microsoft acquired Cloudin, and soon it'll be embedded within the portal. But for now, you got to jump over to Cloudin and enable it. But then it does give you a breakdown of your environment and also gives you ways you can save and optimize if there's any storage waste, because you're paying for storage. If it's used and that VM's powered off, you're paying for that storage. So if a VM's been idle for X many days, you can create reports for your CIO that look really pretty, stuff like that. So we'll probably do a nice little course on that one.
Yeah, the other one that we're working on to kind of round out the 533, but we've sort of decided we don't just want to completely hit the curriculum in the 533, which calls for Azure Container Service. There's sort of a topic they added recently in the exam update. So we're going to add that, but that's also spurred on the thought of, okay, with Azure Kubernetes Service really gaining a lot of traction, that's probably also going to be, the next sort of mini course, if you will, like more like the hour and a half kind of introductory courses just to get people up and running with those, key pieces of technology. But we're open to feedback. I mean, I think that a lot of it's going to be based on what people, say and want. And certainly we want to make sure that any gaps we've got in the 533, we already had, a few, users kind of try the course, and we've already made updates. They said, okay, I got this topic, but I'm really new to this. I didn't know anything about networking at all. How do I get a base foundation? And I think we sort of looked at like, okay, well, do we just refer them to Pluralsight or YouTube, or do we record a mini kind of, 10, 20-minute video to get somebody, into that? And that's kind of the route we took. I'm not saying we'll take that every single time, but, we kind of do it on a case-by-case basis and just kind of need to assess. So.
Hello, everyone. Once again, the ExploreVM podcast is looking for guests for season 2. We've got some great content lined up and want to keep the show rolling. Do you have a product, project, or solution you think can help others? Was your abstract rejected for a conference but you'd still like to present your idea? Or do you simply just wish to share your story? Please contact me at paul@explorevm.com or ping me on Twitter. Let the ExploreVM podcast help your brand and help others grow. Now, back to the show. You've mentioned you've got a few users already. They're doing the courses. You've gotten feedback. Are you tracking their progress at all, or is there any kind of gamification?
Yeah, so there is a leaderboard that our hosting platform provides us. So our entire site is hosted on Teachable, and as part of that, there's a leaderboard that we can kind of see progress, and it's been pretty interesting. The course has only been up a few weeks, and I think we've got 41 active students last time I checked, which is far beyond where we thought we'd be at this point. We're happy to just get 5 at this point.
They're all of our friends and family.
Yeah.
Pity sign up.
Exactly. So pretty excited about that, and it's been interesting actually that they're all from different geographies. We had someone from Australia sign up at 2 a.m. this morning, I believe it was, and so it's pretty exciting when you wake up and you see like 2 or 3 more people signed up for the course. So that's great to see. But to answer your question, yeah, there's progress reports that we're seeing, and what's really interesting is there's a lot of people that are kind of like 30-40% progressed through the course right now. And there's one person that's at like 90%. So it's sort of this big big difference there, I guess. And somebody's definitely, going out. So we'll definitely be in touch with that user and, be asking them, not only for a lot of feedback, but just excited to hear about the first person who gets certified, right? I think, that would be it.
Are there any plans to add courses to Skylines, like, I don't know, like more abstract thoughts, like IT architecture and how to actually build something to link to your on-premises data center, or anything along the lines of like bigger picture, just not technology specific?
Maybe how to make the perfect cup of coffee.
Oh, yeah.
That
Yeah, I mean, I guess we haven't thought about, those yet. We've got so much on our plate right now, but
Right.
I don't know.
It's a great idea. I mean,
It is a good idea.
we like the real world examples and connecting
Yeah.
it, like Nick said, not just the education, but how to use it. So that's a good idea. It's something to think about.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, we can have you
So-
like do gardening videos. I don't know.
Well, if you saw my garden, you wouldn't want me doing gardening videos. So, outside of just the website and the videos, what do you have forming around Skylines?
Oh, Brett, you go for it.
Okay. So, yeah, we are in kind of the process of launching a blog, which Amy's heading up, but Nick and I will definitely be contributing since there's just 3 of us right now and we all have to pull our weight, right? I think we just want to engage as many people as we can. We're, out there on social media trying to post things and make sure people know that we're following Azure closely. We have talked about doing a what's new in Azure, either, short clips or small blogs and things like that. So, we want to expand a little bit beyond just the course and make sure people know that we're staying in touch with what's new and what's out there.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. The one of the things we've been doing is posting the virtual machines modules completely free on YouTube. So that's one of the areas people can get, free access to some of the material as well and kind of try things out. We're a big believer in if you like the product, you'll go and buy it. So that's another area where YouTube's taken off. And
then we have the Slack channel for Azure Study, so kind of like a study group where people can ask questions or bounce ideas off each other, and hopefully we'll have time to support people too as it grows.
Yeah, the key with the Slack channels, we sort of have the channel already created. We just haven't announced it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is, we want there to be enough people on the course already so that, kind of everybody helps each other rather than, we're having to monitor a Slack channel 24/7 and, we want people to get their questions answered, right? So that's one of the big things there. And then the blog, the what's new.
Yeah, definitely what's new every Friday because there's always something new. It's going to be so cheesy, but one of my colleagues, he always says, we call it Azure because as you're learning it, we're changing it. So you can edit that out if you need to, but it cracks
No,
me
please
up.
keep it.
I'll give a shout out to Manuel because he's the one that came up with that. But it's true. Like you literally learn something and then something new has changed on it. A limit's been increased or, functionality's been added or a new preview has been added as well. So it's just, it's such a huge product to learn in itself, and then to stay on top of the changes is just crazy.
Yeah, I think the other area, that we're super passionate about is just the healthcare sector, and on top of the education sector is just the healthcare sector as well. Amy and I has worked at a lot of university hospitals, and Brett and I have met people like from the Early Children's and other areas, and I think that area of IT is just starting to explode in the cloud world now, particularly around all the data and analytics and things like that. So, I think there's kind of what we want to do as far as getting people certified and educated, and then there's kind of these new innovative areas that IoT, some of these other things I think we'd really like to get into and build. And
Right, and I think the 3 of us, we all like giving back to the community and, stuff like Azure. There's a lot of ways to give back to the community, like telemetry for medicine, like doctor can be remote while a nurse, is diagnosing a patient, or he can supervise a surgery, across the world. Maybe they don't have a specialist. We had an Armenian eye care project that a guy, I think he was in California, he headed up and he was able to help cure blindness in this young child that's completely curable, but from across the globe. So it's really about giving back too. Technology can give back to our community, to our, our children. They're learning how to, create little Minecraft worlds, and there's the science behind it. And so it's really exciting to be a part of and to see and to help enable those transformations in hospitals and schools.
Yeah, Amy told me this one story when I think you were working with one of your education clients, and they got an email, and someone basically said it was to do with the feature in Edge, which could actually like read aloud books, right? So you can download your ebook or PDF or whatever, and it's something simple. Like I took this for granted. Like there's these new browsers, and everybody again probably got their favorite, Chrome, Firefox, and Edge, and there's wars there, right? But just something Microsoft was doing in the Edge browser is putting a lot of these features in there, and this could allow a book to just be read aloud to a child, and dyslexic
Well,
kids.
it's one notebook. It was
It was one notebook. Okay,
Yeah.
it's notebook.
OneNote, yeah. OneNote, sorry.
Okay.
Can't even say the product right.
Yeah, but just the fact that this technology is empowering people. I think you got the email, from I think it was the mother or the teacher or something said this literally changed the child's life,
Right, because with
and
dyslexia, they learned, patterns like splitting up the word or changing the colors of the words with a different background where you can have immersive learning and actually contributing too, so you can read a document the way you need to read it. So there's the read aloud function or the break apart the word by syllables or, changing the color of the text to help kids with dyslexia be able to read a book and contribute with their other classmates. And you can't even tell that they're in a different version than the other kids if they're all looking at it at the same time. So it's really exciting to see.
I think, yeah, it's super interesting, Amy's stories from Microsoft and hearing about it. Just, I go back to when we were first concepting doing Skylines Academy and creating the first course. And we thought about, marketing to maybe community colleges or other educational institutions to get people certified in Azure. And I think Nick and Amy and I were talking about, how do we sell them on learning this technology? And it's like, well, you bring up stories like the one that Amy just brought up, right? It really can impact people's lives. You're not just sitting behind a keyboard. You're making a big impact. So that's super important to us too.
Now, a little bit off topic, but Nick and Amy, I met you through VMUGs years ago, obviously a heavy VMware presence. So what inspired the transition from VMware to cloud?
Interesting. Yeah, I honestly I didn't see it coming, but I think it was a natural transition for me, just being in IT in general, how we most started out with, the little help desk girl, and then I was a network engineer, and then I was a Windows admin, and so the next step, oh, it's, virtualization. That's scary. Oh my God, we can't virtualize SQL and we can't do that. And then that became the norm. And now you see some companies, cloud first and then maybe virtualize on-prem. But so it felt like the next step. Like I love VMware. I love it as a virtualization technology. And I felt really up on, when you feel really up on your game, you've learned everything, you're passionate about it, and now you're ready for the next step. So it kind of entered my life kind of in a romantic way. It was a project at my old place that I worked before. And so when I started using it and learning about it, I fell in love with it and I knew that's what I wanted to do. So
yeah, and I think for me it's kind of similar as well. I've gone through all these different technologies, Windows, OS support, networking, virtualization. I think the big turning point for me in my career was certainly when I got into automation, and I had amazing success with that, and I love it. And I think it's just pure efficiency that drives me, if I have to put it any other way. I can't stand, like, if there's something I don't have to deal with in the system, so I can focus on something that creates more value. That's just, I think, how I'm wired, right? So when it was even things like back in my TransUnion days, when people were like, okay, you've got to put a change ticket in every week when you do this, like, it was like expanding disks for the requests that came in that week, or there were C drives getting filled up because someone had some security logs, right? And it was like, this is all ridiculous, right? So it's like we're hiring people to do these like administrative like tasks, and the things that can just be automated, right? And so it was going back to that change record example. It was like, I don't even want to go and fill out the document and the change process. It was like Computer Associates, Unicenter at the time was the technology we were using. And so I built an info path form that you could just, fill in, and we had many of these saved, and you just click the button at the bottom of the form, and it would go over to CA Unicenter and fill out your change request. And I feel like cloud is like the next level above all of like automation for on-prem. Like a lot of our automation on premises was going into VMware, building your VM. Then before that, we have to go and get an IP address and get a DNS entry, and go and put an AD object in an OU in AD. So all those kind of things that you have to do, like 15 tasks that you have to automate. Now in the cloud world, it's just purely infrastructure as code, and that's actually one of the things I think people get sometimes wrong on premises versus public cloud. When I think of vRealize Orchestrator, I don't really necessarily think of that exactly as infrastructure as code. I'm not declaring my entire infrastructure as code. I'm building a workflow that's going to go and execute a series of steps that I used to do manually. And whether I use vRealize Orchestrator or some other tool to do that, or PowerShell scripts. It's still kind of task driven. In the public cloud world, I can take an ARM template, I can just define my entire infrastructure literally as code in there, and it's predictable as well because it's the same every time when I deploy that against Azure. When I'm on premises, one customer I'm dealing with might be on Infoblox, the next one's on BlueCat, and then maybe they didn't upgrade their Infoblox appliance, so now the VRO workflow doesn't work. And all of this, as much as I love automating on-prem, and I think there's still a lot, there's is endless, work still to be done there. I think, as people aren't going to move everything overnight to the public cloud, there's just a better way to do it. And I feel like, any of these public cloud providers, AWS, Azure, Google provide that. And that for me is the big thing. And then when you go beyond virtual machine provision, which I think is what everybody gets into, first of all, they go to Azure and like, okay, everyone thinks in the VM mentality. But a lot of clients I've been working with lately are looking at all the, the Azure SQL services. In Azure, you've got 4 flavors of SQL you can deploy now. We've got Azure SQL, which is the new kind of PaaS service that, everybody tries to use first of all. Now you've got SQL managed instances, which kind of run like your traditional VM, but you don't have to manage the SQL engine. Then you've got SQL Server on IaaS virtual machines, and then you've got just VMs and do-it-yourself SQL on top of that. So but each of those levels, gives you a different level of efficiency. If you go all the way up into the PaaS service, if you can, and when you're building new applications, you should definitely try to use as many of those new services as you can. It's even things like SQL Server integration services. Now you can use Azure Data Factory, analytical services. There's, analytical service, PaaS service now as well. So, the options are immense. But again, I think that comes back to a big topic here. Educated and keeping up to date on all of these is the hardest part. And so building this course was also a way for me to get up to date, as I had to go and build the Azure practice out in ahead. So it was like, how do I do it? So this was a big mechanism, and that was a pretty long answer to your question. So I'm gonna pause.
He does like to talk, so that's why we have him do all the recordings, because he likes to talk.
Yes, and he has that British accent, so that helps us too.
Exactly.
Is that what it is?
I thought it was Australian.
Oh.
Maybe. He's actually Australian. No, he's not.
Oh,
He loves when you say it.
I'm gonna be quiet now.
No, you're not.
Right. He'll have something soon.
All right. For those who are interested in attending the academy or viewing the videos, where do they go to sign up? What are the costs involved with this course?
So you can find us at skylinesacademy.com, and the course right now is for $49. We are going to, since Paul was such a gracious host with us today, we're going to give a 50% off code if you use the coupon code ExploreVM, just like Paul's blog, and 50% off for all of May, so in honor of Paul. You can also show your support for us by following us on Twitter at Skylines Academy. Facebook is also Skylines Academy, and then LinkedIn, you can just search Skylines Academy. Feel free to follow us there. We also have a YouTube channel that we talked a lot about today, also Skylines Academy. So we'll be regularly updating, posting videos on there you can view with what's new in Azure and, videos demoing different functionalities. So come check us out.
Yeah, just to add to that, the $49 or $24.50 with the ExploreVM code, that's for lifetime access, by the way. So you pay that once, and it's lifetime access to the course.
Oh, that's good
all
to know.
Updates included, yeah.
Just that $24.50, that $49, will that cover all courses, or just the one, the 533?
Yeah, so just to be clear, that's just for the 533, and then each of the subsequent certification courses, will have, similar pricing is our expectation at this point. Some of the smaller courses that come out, they'll have, different pricing. We haven't quite decided what they'll be at, but we'll let you know. Once we've got a number of courses, we are considering putting on a monthly option if you just want to pay monthly for temporary access to all the courses. Those are things we're thinking about. But for right now, if you were trying to get started in Azure, it's the 7533, and it's that 2450 with the ExploreVM code, and that's for lifetime access for that course.
And please subscribe to the YouTube channel so we can have our custom URL and not this long string. So if you get 100 subscribers, you can change it. So
I think it's 1,000 subscribers.
no, it's 100.
100? Okay.
Yeah.
100. That's our goal.
So if you're listening, please
subscribe.
Be a humanitarian.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you for your time. I think it's been an interesting episode, an interesting topic, and I, for one, am looking forward to diving into the training course myself. So outside of Skylines Academy, where can you all be found online? Not that you have time for it, but are there any other projects you'd like to bring up as well?
Well, I am at WeirdGirl, WYRDGIRL. I've been online with that. That used to be my Yahoo email, so I've been stuck with that Twitter handle, so forgive me. But yeah, I'm on Twitter, on LinkedIn, Amy Manley, and I'm pretty vocal, so you'll see me out there.
Yeah, pretty vocal.
Pretty vocal.
Yeah, no, I'm Nick Collier. That's at VNickC. So I've still got the V there from my virtualization days. Maybe got to change the handle at some point. Cloud Nick C or something. I don't know. But yeah, I'm out there, and yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm on Reddit a lot as well. Kind of responding to people around questions they've got on the Azure group and Reddit as well.
Yeah, and then Brett Bosick on LinkedIn. I also, like we talked about it earlier, my Twitter is pretty weak right now, but I will be starting a project to pump that up a little bit. So it's at Brett, BRETTEMB on Twitter, and it's going to look a lot better soon. I think my last post was in 2012. Don't judge me.
That's all right. I thought you would be like the boss, something.
Maybe I should change that. You're right.
Brett the boss.
All right. Well, once again, I want to thank you for your time.
Yep. Thank you, Paul. We
Thanks,
appreciate
Paul.
it.
Thanks so much.
And thank you for listening. I strongly suggest taking a look at Skylines Academy to begin your Azure journey. And hey, half off with coupon code ExploreVM isn't too shabby either. Also, what do you think of the new theme music? A longtime friend of mine, Matt Carlson, sent over a song he felt was techy and nerdy, so a perfect fit for the show. If you'd like to continue the conversation on Skylines Academy, have an idea for a show, or would like to be a guest on a future episode of the ExploreVM podcast, reach out to me on Twitter at ExploreVM, email me paul@explorevm.com, or facebook.com/ExploreVM. And as always, thank you for listening. And let me start that again. I'm such like.